I'm a nerd.
Nerds.
Nerds.
Nerds!
I'm not kissing a nerd.
What is a nerd?
We interrupt this program for an important message from Nerdables.
All right, we ready? Welcome, Deadables. It's time for another episode of the Walking Dead-Cast.
Deadables?
Deadables.
Sounds
It's
like a bad...
Nerdables, Deadables.
Sounds like a bad kid snack.
Deadables?
Deadables.
Which Disney Channel kid would you get to do that one?
I don't know.
So, anyways, this episode of The Walking Dead, what'd you think of it? What was it titled? Here's Not Here. Here is Not Here.
Yes, it's a kind of a backstory to Morgan between when we saw him in Season 3 till now.
It was a filler episode, so that way they didn't have to go into detail and they could prolong what has happened to Rick and Glenn. It's a total filler.
Well,
it's a great filler episode.
Yes, no, it's a great episode. But, towards the end of the episode, if you listen closely, you hear something, but we'll get into that a little bit later.
I must have missed that.
It's very faint. It's like in the background, so you'll hear, or I'll talk about it towards the end of our podcast as we go through the episode.
Our second podcast of the night.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Well, it gives some kind of insight on what happened last episode, but very, very like it's nothing. It's nothing like super. It's not gonna. You're not gonna be like, oh my god, I know what happens now.
Well, it couldn't have been because that episode ended when we first see him with the Terminus sign. So the gang is all at Terminus then. So this episode takes place 2 years ago.
That's actually later than the Terminus sign, but it's okay.
No, it's not.
What I'm talking about.
Oh,
yeah.
So this happened after the Terminus sign?
Yeah, it's like after he's speaking to the wolf and all that stuff. So.
Oh yeah, because I forget he does go back to the wolf. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So yeah.
I forgot about that.
So yeah.
So yes. Okay. So the episode opens. We have Morgan, like in a PTSD daze. It's kind of they did a real interesting.
Well, if everybody remembers
fade and
the episode from season 3 titled "Clear," when we see Morgan again for the first time since season 1, and he's gone essentially nuts, and that's basically his well-being at this point in this episode. It's basically going back to that time where he was, suffering with his PTSD and PTSD and
yes,
all that jazz.
So we have Morgan. He is barricading himself in a. Well, not yet because it opens up. He is, as always, we should say spoilers. But
he's in the woods.
He's in the woods. He ends up killing a couple people that are.
He just always, he's making a lot of fire, a lot of noise to get like walkers out and to kill them, just because he feels the need that he needs to kill them.
What's funny is when he built the fire and everything, and he was still killing them. I was like, well, why didn't he just let him walk into the fire? Then all of a sudden you see the one walk through the fire. It's like, there we go.
Yeah. But even you notice that that doesn't really stop them from walking through and catching on fire. He still had to
he had to kill
down.
Yeah. So we see him kill his first couple humans. Well, maybe not his first couple, but
well, yeah. It's just his well-being at that point is he thinks everybody's out to get him, and he needs to kill everybody essentially
he needs to clear them, as he says in the episode. He needs to clear them away from him. Right. That's the only way he's going to survive is if he clears
area,
whether they're alive or dead away from him. And then he comes across a goat who is owned by Josh McDermott, who is a great character actor. Josh McDermott is the actor that was in this episode. Who was that then?
Josh McDermott is Eugene.
Oh, I mean, yes.
He's
Yes, He is. I'm just, dude. I'm tired. It's been a long day.
I forget what his name is, but yeah, as soon as I saw him on the screen, I was
Yes.
like, I know this guy.
He was in Drew Carey. He was Drew Carey's brother in
Yeah.
and
he is a fantastic actor.
he's a great character actor too. And I just totally now got Josh McDermott on my mind.
So let's see.
Go ahead, find it for us while we're still talking. So, anyways, he goes, he finds his cabin in the woods. Nice little, it seems like it's almost secluded from the rest of the world. What's going on with the world?
John Carroll Lynch.
John Carroll Lynch. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, so
anyways,
it's it's a nice little secluded spot. You can tell it's one of the first times, I guess, going back and watching the Talking Dead, and they talk about how it's like the first time in a long time that they've actually gone on location to shoot, and they're not in a studio or like on a set. And so it was just kind of had that same, old feeling that they used to have.
well, it's what you'd call a bottle episode because everything happens, real within an area. It's just a couple characters. In a way, it kind of reminded me of the episode of Breaking Bad, The Fly, when it's just the two of them inside the mega brewery.
Mega brewery. The mega meth lab.
The mega meth lab.
Yeah. No, it is. And, I think with the exception of the wolf at the end.
Yes.
It's only just the two of them.
Well, I mean, you have the two humans that are barely in it, and then you have a few walkers.
Yeah. As far as characters and actors and whatnot, it's really only like 4 people.
Yeah, I mean, it was a way to definitely see how how far Morgan had gone. And this is a very big redemption episode.
Right.
You got a chance to see. His name was Eastman. That's who
Eastman,
that's
Eastman is what I think they.
Who is he was a psychiatrist,
forensic
psychiatrist. Yes,
yeah, psychiatrist is basically in charge of whether or not people incarcerated are eligible for parole and things like that.
At one point, I thought he was the killer and he took over his life. In the episode, he's telling Morgan a story about how he's dealt with all these different prisoners and everything, and there was only one prisoner that he found that was pure evil. And this prisoner, throughout the course of the story, he ends up finding out that he kills Eastman's daughter and son and wife, and
Eastman essentially killed him.
Yeah, and at one point I thought maybe it was actually the killer, and he had taken over Eastman's life.
Which I thought that would have been kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so essentially it's this guy who's found the art of Aikido.
Yes.
And, a form of martial arts, and just a way of living as where, he keeps mentioning that all life is precious, like you've heard Morgan say so many times. So you kind of learn now that,
you learn where Morgan's come from.
Yeah, this is where Morgan has learned it, and how he became so well trained in the staff and, everything like that.
Why he does his routine every time that you see him now.
Does his forms, as they say.
Yes. Anything special you learned about this episode? About the character of Morgan?
I wouldn't say anything special, but it's definitely helps his character, which it also turns into what I've been thinking along is they wanted to show people his character arc, so I do feel that Morgan is on his way out, from the series.
You think so?
I think so.
I think to me it cements his character more
right away. Yeah, I don't say the next episode Morgan's gonna die. No, but I think it's just it's the telling of his character, so it's like his story is kind of over. You know what I'm saying?
To me, it more cements his character as the Jiminy Cricket to Rick. It gives him more of a purpose to bring Rick back.
Yeah, But yeah, I mean, we'll see how it goes. I mean, that's my theory.
If
is
Rick's
that-
still alive.
Yeah. Oh, he's alive, and I'll tell you why later. So,
I hope not much later because,
right. No, once we get towards once we
Okay,
go
so
through it.
so we see Morgan locked in a cage once again. Now we understand earlier in the season where he tells Rick sometimes being locked in a cage is not a bad thing. He once again is locked in that cage, and now we understand where that came from.
Right. Where essentially it was never locked in the cage. The door was always open.
Yes.
As Zeno mentions, he's like, you could leave whenever you want. The door's open. I threw the key in the river like a long time ago.
Yes. Which is very interesting because it almost makes that little point of Morgan ripping off the zipper and starting to dig at the window, which that was my biggest problem with this whole episode. Because first of all, when he's digging at the window, it came off way too easy. There's no way that little zipper thing would have.
Well, that's also like playing on the fact that it's degraded after so many years. It could be just like without
But you could tell that
the
there were
proper
finger
care.
marks and stuff like that, which we learned why there were that.
Right.
But it was to me, it was like, well, that was pointless because as Morgan is digging and everything, Eastman comes home, and
Well,
it's that scene. He tells him, "Well, the door's always been unlocked."
Yeah, well, I mean, it's essentially showing that Morgan was trying to escape, and he was never a prisoner, essentially. So it's just kind of a play on, like where his mental state is.
Yes,
Is like you feel like you're a
it was
prisoner.
it was his mind keeping him prisoner, not the actual
So
Eastman guy.
right. So I mean, throughout the episode, it's all about like some training,
It's finding that inner peace,
finding his inner peace,
and letting go.
Yeah. So I mean, there's even a point where Eastman tells him, oh, have you lost anybody? And he says, my wife and son. And he basically says,
What's their names?
I need their names. And then I think that's kind of a turning point where it's kind of let Morgan accept, what has happened to his family.
Well, he made the comment of, there's a door, you're always trying to walk through the door, but the door always leads you back to the same place you were. One of these doors will finally allow you to leave.
Right.
And that's, that was the same premise of when he told him, well, the door's never been locked. That was him it was a metaphor telling him, hey, the door of your mind has never been locked. All you need to do is have the courage to walk through it.
Right.
And you see in this episode, once Morgan finds out that the door is unlocked, he goes right back into the cage and shuts the door.
Right.
Eastman opens it, he shuts it back.
Right.
Because he's not ready at that point to walk out.
Exactly.
And you notice it was nice that Morgan didn't change clothes until his character changed.
Right.
He after he comes out of the cage, basically, metaphorically and actually, that's when you start seeing him clean up. You start seeing, you stop seeing that weird camera phase thing that they were doing.
Like blurred edges and
Yeah.
things like that.
So it was a very, very interesting, scene or episode, and nice little retrospective into Morgan's psyche, and even the character of Eastman.
Even in the past seasons, that a lot of the main characters have had these type of episodes where it was just basically
Rick
on
with the
their
phone,
own,
yeah.
on their own, basically dealing with the issue that they have. And so, they always do a really good job with these type of episodes because it also dwells deep into what the character is.
Yes.
And so you get a really good sense of the character. And, I enjoyed it for that fact. As you know it, and as many people that probably hear me talk about it, I love character stories. I love, when a movie or a show really gets you into a character to the point where, you understand them so much better.
Right. And
So-
when that person, when whatever happens to that person or that character
Right.
affects you
Right.
physically and emotionally.
So, I feel like this episode did that for Morgan more than, before I would say Clear was one of my favorite episodes with Morgan in it, where now I see this and I'm like, well, this is kind of taken over.
Did you, and we kind of touched this on the Nerdables podcast, very, very briefly. Did you expect Easton to die?
Yes, because you don't see him with him.
But that doesn't mean anything.
Well,
I mean, like Chris said on the episode, it would have been a very interesting twist if Morgan left and the goat and Eastman were still alive.
Well, what's it called? Because 3/4 way into the episode, they talk about, well, we're going to leave. Where do we want to go? We're going to go together.
But he
like
never and that's why I thought that maybe Eastman could have stayed there because he never had, and this could have been his own cage that he couldn't have walked out of. And I thought that would have been a very interesting twist, is if Eastman keeps talking about leaving, he seems all together, but that final step of walking out of his own cage,
Right.
he couldn't do. And I thought that would have been more interesting than to kill him off, because he was a very interesting character.
Yeah.
And if
He
you
was
look
a
at it,
character only to serve a purpose, and but they did a great job writing for this episode. Scott Gimple did the writing for this episode. He did the directing, which we've seen in the past when he does the script and he directs. He does a great job.
Right.
There's a lot of episodes that he's done that are great, and I just think everything was on point with this episode to give you the emotional feeling that you needed, and to really understand the character. And I understand, like when Chris says, hey, I would like to see a happy ending sometimes.
right?
But this is the nature of the show. It's not going to always be a happy ending.
No, but for
that
this
would have been a
episode,
twist, yeah.
it would have been nice to have that, especially when you get to the fact that Morgan's telling this as a history lesson or as a story. If you would have gotten to that point where, hey, you know what? He's alive. He's well. He's still living there, trying to make his cheese and everything.
Right.
That would have been kind of more impactful to the wolf that he's telling this to, because then it's like, look, there's complete hope. It's not just me standing here in front of you. There's a man still living, surviving this, making a better life for himself.
Yeah, I guess.
And it would have been, to me, in something that is so bleak and always danger and death right around the corner, to have that little island of hope out there.
Right.
It would have been a nice little twist.
Yeah. No,
But instead, what we have is, it's really Morgan's fault that he's dead.
Well, yeah, I mean, Morgan ends up freezing up because the walker that starts coming after him while they're in the woods is the same guy that he choked out earlier. And so he notices that and kind of freezes up. And Eastman, jumps in the way and, essentially gets bitten by the walker.
And that was the other thing is, they'd gotten to the point in the story with Morgan where he had released all of what he was holding on to, but he was actually responsible for Eastman being bit because he froze up, because he strangled this guy in the first place, because of all these things that led up to this circumstance. That there was you never heard him, heard Morgan, that is, verbally say, I'm sorry, or there was nothing to indicate any connection of Eastman being bit or any remorse from Morgan's side.
It does, because, after Eastman heads back, and then Morgan kind of, gathers himself again and goes back again.
To bury, that was a nice touch, though,
When
with the
he
burying.
starts, when he starts, digging the grave, and Morgan comes in, no, you need to sit down. At that point, it's like, I'm gonna care for you now, knowing that these are your final moments.
Right, but to me, I wish there would have been a little bit more of a verbalization of that. Other than just sit down before you collapse. If he would have, said something here, it's my turn to take care of you now, or something, that would have been more poignant to me. That would have been more powerful than just.
And I think that's what they were trying to show. The guy Eastman's digging the grave, and Morgan comes in, takes him and basically tells him to go relax, and then he continues digging the grave for him.
Right.
But
I mean, going back to Eastman, if Eastman would have survived, if they would have done that twist, think about in the overall with the show, if anytime that you get that darkest time, and Morgan now has, hey, Rick, there is somebody surviving, and they're not necessarily happy, but they're content. They accept the way the world is. There is hope. That would have always been there. That would have been, with the audience, there'd always been, hey, there's at least one person that can do this.
Well, it's him basically wanting to spread the fact of the whole mantra of Apkido is, all lives are precious.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he's trying to pertain. But I also think towards the end of this episode, Morgan's having doubts about that whole mantra too. You kind of see it in his face. If you want, we'll go ahead and kind of jump forward and towards the end, because that's basically covering, the whole gist of the 90-minute episode.
Which, it was a 90-minute episode, and the pacing of it felt good.
Yeah.
It wasn't like there was, oh God, come on, let's get on, let's do something. There weren't a lot of zombies. There wasn't a lot of action.
But that's the thing with this show
now.
But
there was so much, that filled it emotionally,
right,
that it kept you compelled to keep going with it.
Well, the thing with this show now is, I don't think that it necessarily needs to have a bunch of zombies in every episode. It's come to the point, there's a lot of people who talk about online, well, it's a zombie show, there should be always zombie killings every episode, and a ton of them, and whatever. And it's like, no, because it's not focusing on the zombies, it's focusing on these characters. And this is, a great telling of it. You don't have that many, walkers, basically, that they're, dealing with. They're not dealing with
I think you can
hordes and
probably
things
count
like
them,
that.
on one hand. Though.
Yeah. And it's basically, just retelling of this character story. And again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, this is the reason why I like this episode so much. Is, it's not something about the zombies. Everybody, you yourself included, is, keep asking me, well, why don't you get, the zombie figures and things like that when I pick up the Walking Dead figures? And it's like, I don't watch the show for the zombies. If I find them and it's like, oh, that's a cool one, I'll pick it up. I picked up a few of them. But it's not like, that's the reason why I collect them. I collect them because, I enjoy those characters.
Right.
So, and that's, I guess I'm going to have the different train of thought than a lot of people who...
So you're really waiting for the Eastman character.
Yes.
That's the toy you now want.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so, even though this show was 90 minutes long, for a recap, it's very easy to recap this and move on and past things, because a lot
happened without a lot happening.
Yes.
And so I think that was the thing about it. We can recap this episode very quickly because it's basically a lot of the same thing, but it's just the way it was done.
Here's one of the really weird and cool things about this episode. So I sat down with Beth last night to watch it, and she hasn't watched last week. And I was like, oh, well, you got to watch last week because... And then I realized, oh wait, this week
nothing to do with
this
last
week
week.
has nothing to do with it. Oh yeah, just sit down. You can watch it before. Just watch it before next Sunday,
right?
Because you don't have to know anything that happened last episode to know this episode, and that's why this was this is the idealistic filler episode,
right?
Because
it takes away from the main story,
yeah,
but it still gives you a good amount of entertainment for your story that you need.
Exactly. But yeah, it was like, okay. She's like, well, so what happened last week? I'm no, we just go back and watch it. Don't worry about it. You didn't miss that. You didn't miss anything. Just don't listen to the podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, for an episode that was 90 minutes long, it didn't need to have all the action of the premiere episode, the season premiere. That was 90 minutes long also.
Or even the last episode, all the action that was in the last episode.
Right.
And
that's another good thing, is as intense as the last episode was, with action and what was happening, this one had just as much intensity, but it was emotional instead of action-driven. Yeah. No, I think it was a brilliant episode. I loved how... it ended up being Morgan telling the wolf at the end what was going on. And I absolutely loved the wolf's reaction.
Right.
To the way this, it wasn't to me, it was perfect, and it would have even been better. Like I said, and I keep going back to that twist. If they would have left him alive, it would have even been better if he was still alive, and the wolf had the same reaction.
Hmm.
And the wolf's reaction could have even been even stronger. Is once I get out of here, I kill you and kill everybody you know and all the children here. You know what? I want to go after him and kill him too.
Yeah.
Because then it's like even more. He wants to make sure that he kills all goodness in the world.
No.
Or anything that isn't and just the whole reaction with the wolf was just, even though it doesn't have that little element that I'd like to have had, it still had everything that it needed to have,
Right.
because Morgan thought he could do what Eastman
he basically
did.
thought he can Eastman the wolf.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, his reaction was, you probably can tell better than I can, but
no, it's great. I mean, it's funny because you're watching the first part and he's talking about how he wants to be better and he wants to have a better life, and he only came to Alexandria because he needed the medicine and blah blah. So you're thinking, oh, he's really turning around.
he's got to him.
He's turning around, and then the very last second he's like, but you know what? I decided I'm just gonna kill you all.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna kill all the kids. I'm gonna kill all the women.
And that's the code I follow.
Yeah. And so you're like, well, shit, this guy's pure evil, And so that's essentially what, Eastman was telling Morgan about the guy who killed his family.
But it also reiterates what Rick tells him too.
Yeah. Is that this world has changed. And, you can't not kill everybody.
Right.
And so I think
There are people that deserve to die because they can't defend themselves.
Right.
There are people that deserve to die because they're going to kill you.
Right.
They don't care whether you have your own code. They don't care whether you are...
They're essentially psychopaths.
Yes.
They're killing for the sake of killing.
Yes.
Because they can.
And that's just it. It's because they can.
And so, and I really thought, at the end when Morgan leaves and he closes the gate, it was kind of going to be a playing of, when he was in the prison or in the cage, is where he's just going to leave it open.
Oh, no, I knew he had
But then,
to lock it.
when he locked it, and then the look on his face and the way that he comes out thinking, like he's got a thought in his head, he's like, you know what, maybe Eastman wasn't all right with saying that, all lives are precious.
No,
And I think it's just, he's just kind of getting to him to the fact that, yes, we should try to save most lives, but there's some people that are just pure evil.
That's what that was the whole thing with Eastman when he mentions the killer that kills his family. He ends up he essentially, the cage that Morgan was in, he built for this murderer so that he could put him in it. Right. And obviously we're not going into the whole story of of what this guy did or how he manipulated his way out of prison or whatnot, but Eastman got him, brought him there, and let him starve to death. Mm-hmm. When I saw Morgan walking out and locking the door, that's exactly what I thought. He's going to let him starve to death.
Yeah.
That guy's done. That door will never be opened with that guy alive again. Mm. He'll be a zombie at some point in that room.
Well, he was also injured. He got like a laceration of some sort on his stomach. So you don't know if that's a bite or just a.
It
stab.
didn't look like a bite.
It looked like a slash or like a stab wound or something.
But it did look like it was getting infected.
Yeah.
So. Okay, so we're at the end. What did you hear?
So at the very end, when Morgan is like looking off, and you start hearing someone yelling at the gate.
Yeah, I heard that.
Doesn't that sound awful like Rick?
You see, that's what I thought. It was Rick.
So it's Rick coming back from his. I think it's going to be Rick running back, and he's got the whole horde behind him, essentially. Because in the last episode, you see him kind of trapped in the RV with the whole horde walking towards Alexandria.
You don't think that it's him with Glenn on his shoulder, like
no,
dragging him?
Because they're so far away from each other.
That we know of. Remember, Rick was going to the town.
Yeah, but Rick was stuck in the RV essentially 13 miles away from where they were.
See, I don't know. I think.
I mean, it's possible because you don't know the time gap between the episodes. If it's like a day, it's very possible. But also, I mean, he doesn't really know where they are.
Right.
He kind of like hears Glenn on the walkie a little bit right before those guys jump him in the RV. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't really know where he is.
Now, when you first saw Morgan coming out of his story talking, did you think he was talking to a wolf, or did you think he was talking to somebody else?
I thought he was talking to the wolf.
I thought he was talking to Carol.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
because I remember him putting him in the room.
See, I didn't remember that.
So, or like he was fighting him in the room in the last episode.
Oh, okay.
So that's why I thought it was.
I thought maybe it was Carol.
Mhm.
Because Carol has been going so far, and he had, been already telling Carol at one point, you don't need to kill, you don't need to do that.
Right.
So I thought maybe this was him trying to talk Carol.
That would have been interesting too. Yeah, but yeah, I guess we'll see. It looks like all our friends are going to be back next episode.
Yeah.
And
So
so
did you watch the trailer for next week, so to speak?
Yeah.
See, I didn't. I purposely didn't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it doesn't really show you much of anything. It's just the whole, basic Walking Dead promo is like, we all gotta survive somehow, blah blah blah. And it's just like that.
You
A lot of
tuned
knives
into-
being pulled out and guns being raised, but you don't see much of what's gonna happen really.
Did you tune into the Talking Dead?
I watched bits and pieces. I mainly fast forwarded to see, all the special bits, just because
Well, I was just
short on
wondering,
time.
because they obviously had Morgan and Eastman on there.
Yeah, there's a lot of questions that they're getting from the fans about, their thought processes and things like that. I was just kind of like, I've kind of heard this before, and it's like a lot of generic answers. So it's just like fast forward. I didn't really pay attention to what they're.
So what's the main thing you took out of this episode?
Main thing is
Don't fuck with Morgan.
where Morgan is actually the fifth Ninja Turtle. No, it's
Goats are good to have in the apocalypse.
because you can make cheese and
Make bad cheese out of it.
Exactly. No, it's just
If you ever run out of hamburgers, you can always make oatmeal burgers.
oh god, can't imagine how that would taste. I mean, I like oatmeal, but
Hey, food's food, right?
right. But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll look for. I mean, to take away something from this episode, I don't think it was something to really take away for. It was like you say, it's a filler episode, and so it's just essentially to, give you a side story. It wasn't really anything that
It just
progresses.
felt
in
like
the
felt
maker.
like we need to prolong the audience knowing, if Glenn survived, if Rick survived.
Yeah, I
We
guess-
can't have this as the mid-season
They
finale because we got to do something else.
Well,
but
it looks like the little preview from next week is you see Michonne talking to Maggie, so it's a good possibility that she's telling him, hey, you know what? I don't know what happened to Glenn. He went out on a mission and we haven't seen him, and the last thing I saw is we were getting overrun by zombies. So you don't know what Maggie's thought going to be through. My thing is, if Glenn does die, it's going to put a big blow on Maggie. And I know we've talked about this in other seasons where we're getting to the point where Maggie's going to break. If Glenn does die, I really think that they're going to go towards this,
I don't think they can have Glenn die yet.
I don't think he's dead, to be honest
The
with you.
way it happens in the book is just so powerful. I don't see them doing it any
But
other
I think
way.
that's kind of why they want to try to throw you off.
Yes, I agree. I totally agree with you with that, and I agree that they
Because
prolonged
everybody
it.
is waiting for that moment
Yes,
that maybe they don't want to do it with Glenn to kind of throw everybody off. They have the little tidbits like last season where they find the
there's only
bat
two
and,
people you can do that with.
Well, to make an impact, you can really do it with,
No, you
Any of
do
the
it with
main
Glenn
cast.
or Daryl,
and they're not gonna kill Daryl.
especially the way that they're already building up the rest of Glenn's story in the book. I mean, in the show, because they've already alluded to that Maggie's pregnant. So if they, if you're listening to this, I mean, there's obviously spoilers. We've warned you. There's book spoilers into
We're
this.
probably gonna just record it again and put it in the beginning so you know.
But I'm telling you, the mid-season finale, it's coming to it.
You
And
said the mid-season finale is gonna be Carl.
I know, and it's coming to it. The Horde's on its way,
Yeah.
and that's when it happens. I'm telling you, the last thing you see, the mid-season, is Dad, and then the camera pans, and there it is.
I really don't see it, but I guess only time will tell.
It's
We'll see.
only a few weeks out.
We have our gentleman's agreement on it. So
How many episodes do we have before the mid-season finale?
this was episode 4, so 4 more.
Do we?
Yeah.
4?
They usually
End
go up
of
to 8.
November?
Yeah.
Beginning of December?
They usually go to episode 8, and then
You
they
have the
take a
internet.
break.
Won't you look it up?
Is that what that's for?
Yeah, that's exactly what it's for.
Well,
And you know what?
that's
We're even on it. I'm even on the page right now, so
Yeah.
I can just go right to it. Yeah, dude. We have 4 more.
Season or
November-
episode 8.
November 29th.
Yeah, episode 8 is the last one that has a date on
Yep.
it.
November 29th is the last one, season finale. Or mid-season finale.
We'll see. We will see, sir. And it's good to note that it's maybe not a shocker, but a little bit of Walking Dead news is that Walking Dead has been renewed for season 7,
Yes, it has.
which is kind of like.
It's
of
kind well, they
course.
said they were going to go to 10, so.
Well, they say they hope they're lucky enough to get to 10, but I see it. I mean, I can see, especially if something like Smallville has made it to 10 seasons, it can easily.
This is the highest rated show in cable history, so.
Yeah, unless it starts really falling off the tracks and
If they
losing
kill
viewers.
off Daryl and everybody quits watching the show,
They kill off Daryl and Rick, and then go on. Then they're gonna lose a lot of viewers.
Carl becomes the main. No, Ron becomes the main character. So on that note, we're going to wrap up this edition of the Walking Dead-Cast. That didn't sound very scary. So for Ethan, I'm already saying dead you later.
Grr. Or what? Do the Joss Whedon one? Grr, grr.
Grr, grr, grr.